Are you thinking about becoming a home investor for the first time? I know this channel is typically for first-time home buyers and getting your very first house, which is usually your primary residence. So if you haven't bought that first house as your primary residence, go ahead and skip this video because you're not going to need it. But for those of you that do own your home and you're thinking about becoming an investor for the very first time, I want to share some tips and some things that I've learned in my experiences and what I've helped others with to make the right decision, because it's scary, right? You probably remember buying your first house and it was, depending on the situation, if it was with me, probably was a smooth situation and it was great. But sometimes it can be a little crazy and get a little hairy. Investing, similar situation. I'm a huge fan of investment properties. I remember the very first investment property that I bought, and it was a little scary. But understanding the numbers will make you feel a lot better about everything. That's why I love mortgage, because it's math, right? Math doesn't lie. The numbers don't lie. It's still an investment, there's still risk, but with real estate, you can mitigate a lot of that risk by just knowing what you're doing ahead of time and by running the numbers and knowing what it's gonna look like. I always remember this quote when it comes to investing. I can't remember who said it, but I learned about it at a conference. If it makes you money, it costs you nothing. That's essentially what investing is, especially in real estate. Because if you're gonna buy a rental property and it's going to make you money every single month, wouldn't you want to do that as much as possible? That's good debt. We like that type of debt. Debt that makes us money, we want to do that over and over and over. So how do we know that it's a smart investment and that it is going to make you money? This is where we need some tools, and this is where I come into play. So I want to show you some really cool tools that I have that help me really dive deep into the numbers when I look at investment properties. And this is something that I do with every single one of my clients when they're thinking about purchasing an investment property. I run through this exercise, show them the numbers. Usually it's on a 5 to 10-year plan is usually how long you keep an investment property. But we can check it out for more and see what those numbers look like. So I'll share that with you in just a minute. But I want to share a couple of tactics. So first thing I want to go ahead and get out of the way. With investment properties, you are going to need a larger down payment. Pretty much every single investment property requires a 20% down payment, 20% of the purchase price. So again, this is different than a primary home if you're not going to live in it, but if it is truly just going to be for an investment or to rent out, 20% down is pretty much the minimum. There are some programs that allow 15% down, but there's gonna be mortgage insurance and some other things involved. How do you get that money? If you don't have 20% down and you wanna get into investing, how do you do that? This is where existing home ownership comes into play. If you've owned your home for the past few years, chances are you're sitting on a good chunk of equity. The equity is the difference in how much you owe on your mortgage and what it's currently worth. And many times you can borrow against that while still living in your home to get the money needed for a down payment. So the way I like to do this is through a home equity line of credit. A home equity line of credit is super easy. I offer them here at my company. You can apply online today, and most of them get approved within 15 to 20 days, sometimes faster depending on your situation. So that's how you can get the funds for that down payment. That's one way. Another way is just saving it up, right? Good old school saving. And then I do want to share just one other tip. This is how I bought my first investment property. I got a little creative with it as well, but I wanted to do a short-term rental. So I wanted to rent out a property on Airbnb. And at the time when I bought the house, they didn't really have loan programs designed for, an Airbnb. So I bought it as a second home. So when you buy a house as a second home, it has to be a certain distance away from your current primary home. It's got to make sense. They have to know it's going to be a vacation or a second home, something a few hours north or maybe in another state. Perfect example. And the cool thing with second homes is you can do as little as a 10% down payment. So they do require a less down payment compared to an investment property. However, the biggest differences on that is when you're qualifying for an investment property, we can use that new potential income that you're going to receive from rent as income on your loan application to help you qualify. A vacation home or a second home, we cannot do that. We cannot plan on any rent because it's a second home. That's why you get the lower down payment. So you have to qualify for that entire mortgage payment plus all your other debts and if you own an existing home already. If you do qualify, then you can get a nice low down payment. What we did is I didn't rent it out right away. I really did use it as a second home. I knew I wanted to eventually rent it out, but we kept it for about 9 months and just enjoyed it, just lived in it. It's a few hours north of where we live now. Great place to escape the heat. There's snow. It's a fun little cabin. It's available for rent on Airbnb too, so little plug for my cabin. So the second year is when we threw it up on Airbnb. And it was honestly one of the smartest things I ever did, because just in what I'm getting in the nightly rents, overall, this thing pays for itself. just in what I'm renting it for. And so that was one way that I got into it, because I didn't really want to do a 20% and 10% seemed better. And then a year later, when the value increased, I just refinanced it to get the mortgage insurance gone. So that's another thing that you could potentially do. Now we have some other cool programs that do plan on those types of properties. So I know I've made videos in the past about these, but they're called DSCR loans, debt service coverage ratios. Guts of these loans are very simple. You don't have to income qualify for these ones. You do need pretty decent credit. We're talking 700 plus in most cases, and you do need that 20% down payment. However, the really cool thing about these ones is you don't have to do the income part of it. We don't need your pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns. So for self-employed people, or maybe people that don't report a lot of income on paper, this is a great opportunity to get into a house, because we don't have to worry about actually qualifying for it from an income standpoint. So how do you qualify for it, right? Credit-based, and then it's cash flow-based. So let's say that you're gonna rent the property out for $3,000 a month. The mortgage payment is gonna be $2,500 a month. Well, that's $500 positive cash flow. That loan's gonna get approved. So the way that they do that is when we go to order the appraisal to tell us the value, they're also gonna order a comparative rent schedule, which means other homes that are similar in the area, they're gonna find out what they're renting for. And as long as that dollar amount in rent is higher than your mortgage payment, you're good to go. You just have to have the 20% down, cover the closing costs, or we can have the seller negotiate those. Lots of options. But I wanna dive first into this fantastic investment property tool analyzer that I have, which really breaks down the numbers. So let's bust out the computer and check that thing out. Here's this amazing investment property analyzer that I have. This thing is legit. So literally any single property that's available for sale, I'm not gonna do a new one just because I wanna show you an example of how this works. So this was an example of an actual home that was for sale. So 530K is the sales price. These are the actual taxes, estimated insurance, the HOA fee. We're accounting for annual property tax increases. In this particular one, he wasn't gonna have a property manager, but if you are, we can throw those in there. Even have options if you're gonna renovate it, planning in for the cost to sell, 6% to the real estate agent. So we're factoring in all of that. And then here's the loan. So this is, after the 20% down, this is the loan amount. It's a conventional, that's the interest rate. These are the numbers, guys. The numbers don't lie. These are the closing costs. I know these numbers are already probably freaking people out, but you have to look past the interest rate, the closing costs. Like, we have to look at the whole picture. And so I planned on this one owning for 10 years and what that would look like. So again, we're factoring in everything, the cost to sell, the cost of everything, the cost to maintain, the cost of the loan. And so check this out. Year one, it's already cash flowing. Barely. We're only making 155 bucks a month in the beginning because our expenses are $37.43 a month between everything that we have, and then the rental income, $3,900. But check this out. Over 10 years, this is your cumulative cash flow, just over 166K. And so here's the breakdown. We don't need to dive into all of this, but you can clearly see this thing is making money. 10 years time, it's gonna be worth $231,000 more, and that's a very conservative estimate. And then same thing, we look at the amortization gain, we look at your interest rate, and this isn't even counting if you were to refinance in the future. Interest rates will more than likely drop at some point, and we can refinance this thing, which will just even make these numbers even better. But assuming we don't, let's say something crazy happens and you're unable to refinance for whatever reason, this sucker cash flows. If you hang on to it for 10 years, we're even factoring in your down payment. Yes, it was $106,000 down to make this thing happen. With all of that, our profit is still very, very high. This is just a no-brainer. That is why I love that tool so much. It breaks down all the numbers so you can take all the guesswork out of it. We know exactly what we're gonna be cash flowing, years 1, 2, 3, however many years you plan on having it. And in some cases, when we run these numbers, it doesn't cash flow right away. Maybe it'll take 2 years, or maybe you need to renovate it a little bit. This is why this tool is so great. And the cool thing is, it's linked directly to the MLS. So real estate agents that have listed homes for sale, if you find one that's available and you were curious what the numbers would look like from a rental standpoint, just send me the address. We can take a look at it and see if it makes sense, and then get an application to make it happen for you. Home investing. This is where the real wealth gets made. If you're serious about it and you want to learn more, I'd love to show you how I've done it for myself and for others using these great tools and other things to help make investing and more money for you.